morning, Noreen.
Good morning, Dorothy.
Thank you very much for agreeing to this interview.
No problem.
So, as you know, it's to let those coming after us, who will mostly be African, where we came from, where they came from. So, where are you from? Where were you born?
I was born in Drogheda and baptised in Drogheda.
Right.
But because my father was in the police force, we moved round. So we moved from Drogheda to Goodhill, County Cavan, to Buncrana, County Donegal.
Good for you. Where did you do your primary education?
I did my primary education in Goodhill with the Sisters of Mercy. And then I went to Monaghan, and I was there until I did my Leaving Cert.
And did you enter straight?
And then I entered straight after that with the St. Louis.
Right. Mm. What decided you to go to St. Louis rather than, say, the Mercy or any other order?
Well, my initial desire was to go to the Holy Rosaries, because I was always interested in education and in bringing education to areas that wouldn't have the same benefits to what I was having. But then I spoke to one of our sisters, St. Louis nuns, and she said to me, well, why not give God a chance and see, because we have missions too. And that's what I did. I joined the St. Louis, hoping I would get on the missions, but leaving the choice.
So, that's fine. So, after your profession then?
After my profession, I was assigned to Ball in County Mayo for a year and a half. And then I went from there to Edinburgh, to Atholl Crescent, the College of Home Economics. And then, and that was from 1960 to 1963. And then in August of 1963, I went to Nigeria to the training college in Zonkwa.
So you were very lucky, you got your wish.
I got my wish, yeah.
Tonight you got to run the mission straight away. So what was Zonkwa like when you arrived?
Zonkwa was in the middle of nowhere. It was just barren. The nearest town was Kaduna, which was 120 miles away. And the big asset to Zonkwa was that there was a railway line. And so we travelled by train to Kano or Jos or Kaduna, because Kaduna was the seat of the Ministry of Education, where we had to do all our business. And for 6 months of the year, the roads were impassable because of the rainy season. And for the rest, they were passable, but they were all dirt roads. And so what started Zonkwa to thrive as a town was the St. Louis Hospital. And the St. Louis Hospital started in 1955, and then the training college was opened by Sister Iber and Sister Maura Flynn in 1960. And I came in 1963.
And you taught there until? I
taught in Zonkwa from 1963 to 1971, and then at 1971 I was asked to go to Mount Oliver for the year's course in catechetics, which I did, and I came back in 1972, and in 1972 I was assigned to Kano, and I was replacing Sister Daphne McGreel. And then at the end of that year, I got an appointment with the Ministry of Education as Inspector of Primary Religious Education in the Southern Zaria area.
Did that involve a lot of travelling?
That involved a huge amount of travelling. I was on the roads all the time, and the schools that I was going to were away in the, I thought Zonkwa might be remote, but the schools were further into the bush, and you didn't know whether you'd get back with your tires flat or not flat, but it was a wonderful experience, and I got to know all the primary school teachers in the area, irrespective of what religion they were in. They were always happy to see somebody coming and showing an interest in their school. And I felt it very rewarding work, and work that nobody else was doing at the time.
If you were in Zonkwa, you said, was it from 1963 to
1987 when I came back to take up an appointment in the community school in Ramsgrange, County Wexford.
Well, that means you must have been there during the Biafran War.
Oh yeah, we were in the thick of it, yeah.
So what was it like?
Well, it was, you know, we were so remote that we didn't realise the dangers of it at first, because it was the 15th of January 1966 when word came that the Sardana, who was the big governor of the north, had been killed. And then filtered in, you know, we had no post office, we had no telephone, we had nothing, so it was word of mouth. So filtered in that this whole uprising was starting in the north, and also it affected the other province because all their leaders were executed, except, not executed, but mowed down, except the Sikh, who was the governor of the east. Then things were calm for a bit, and then in May of that, the 29th of May, the leader, the army leader who had taken over the state, he was assassinated. And so there was all kinds of rumours and unrest and everything else. And then on the 22nd of September of that year, and it was the rainy season, and the rains were pouring down, we got a word by mouth that the people from a nearby village, which were totally northerners, were coming to attack the Igbo students in our compound. And that word came in about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening time. So that was a terrifying, and we had 66 Igbos in the training college. We didn't have a secondary school at that time, and the nursing school had also got Igbos. So we got, to make a long story short, we heard that there was a train. I told you we were on the train. We heard there was a train coming from Kaduna to the east, and we knew that it would be passing through Zonkwa. So we gathered at 9 o'clock at night, and you know it gets dark at 6 o'clock in Nigeria. We gathered the Igbo girls took them out of their beds and gathered with them, and they had nothing but what they were standing on. And fair dues to the rest of the students who were northerners, they all helped them. And so we went down through this bush area, which was infested with snakes and that, because the train had arrived, but it couldn't go into the station, and so it was very close to the school.
Oh, that was good.
And we went down first and asked the driver would he take them. And when we saw the train, we wondered how they would ever get on, because there were people hanging out of the train and up on the roof and all the rest, because they knew what was happening. So he said yes, and of course we had to pay him. So I had to go back up to the convent to get them money for the travel, and Sister Flannan had to go back up to the school to help the girls and lead them down to the train. And just as we were getting onto the train, didn't these 3 policemen come up the tracks, guns and everything else, and you can imagine how terrified we were.
Yes.
But wasn't one of them a brother of one of the students in the college from nearby Mabushi, and he allowed the train to move on and to go to Cafanchan. And all the students from that train were saved. And it was the last train that went from the north to the east until the Biafran War was over. So it was, if you ask for a miracle, that was a miracle.
Yes.
Because, first of all, the station master was an Igbo, and he ran into the bush, and he was in the bush hiding when the train stopped. So the train couldn't go into the station because there was no station master to allow it in, and so we were fortunate. It stopped directly alongside the college. And every one of those girls and other people that got on at that time were saved.
There would have been a lot of Igbos in Zonkwa, traders and
They were.
everything.
That's why, like the station
Yes.
master was Igbos, the traders were Igbos, the people in the little shops and all, they were all Igbos, you know. And a lot of them got on the train. And those that didn't get on the train, the next day they were helped to go from Zonkwa to Cafanchan, which, you know, was about 30 miles. And they caught the train there. And as I said, and the sad part about that train was that the girls and all got safe passage, but across the Niger River, didn't they take off some of the men, and some of the men were killed at that time.
Oh.
It was brutal. It was brutal.
It seems to have been a brutal war.
Yeah. So it was.
So things calmed down then.
Oh, things didn't calm down. After that was the Biafran. The Biafran War hadn't started at that time.
Oh.
This was the clearing of the Igbos from the north and the pogrom, getting rid of Igbos.
Oh, I see.
And then the Biafran War was the retaliation when Ojukwu and the east broke away from the rest of the country. And economically and business-wise, that would not have helped Nigeria, because Nigeria had only one, what would you call, opening to the sea.
Yes.
And also the east was full of oil wells and all the rest of it, and there was a lot of desert and, you know, underdevelopment in the north and even in the west, you know. So
yes.
I won't speak for the west because I'm not too sure
yes.
of the west, you know. But the Biafran War, I think it started in 1967 or 68, something around that time. I'm not too sure of the date, but it started with the secession of Ojukwu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Breda was saying, I think they had to get their Igbo students out, but that was during the war.
Yes,
they had to get them out of the West.
This was before the war.
Yeah. Oh, I thought this was...
And the 22nd is a significant, it was 22nd of September, and they were going to be celebrating Independence Day, which would be their 6th Independence Day. Nigeria got its independence in 1960. And that was where they were going to rejoice, no Igbos in the north, you know. And also they had the same, what would you call, they had the same dilemma in Jos and Kano as to how to get their students out. But they had an airport in both of those places, so, and also there were a lot of lorries that were run by Igbos and that were protected by the priests of Jos, and they escorted those Igbo lorries with Igbos on it out of the north. And they also went out on the streets at night, the priests, because my brother was one of them, went out and they lifted the Igbos who were injured and brought them to safety. You know, so they did an awful lot. They did it not as a militant, as a charitable, and there would have been, like, there wasn't, the antagonism against the Igbos, there was friendship with the Igbos as well, so a lot of people who lived in Kano and Jos would have been helping to, just the same way as the girls in the training college in Zonkwa were helping their friends to get away, you know. It happened, and the local people, it was an army coup, you know, it was an army coup.
And really, there's nearly a parallel there at the moment to all of that.
Yes.
You know, it's like history repeating
Oh,
itself.
it does. Like
People
it was,
being displaced
yeah, well,
by
you
the
see,
Fulanis.
the problem with it is people looking for their rights, but to colonialism, we all know that the geography of Nigeria needed to be kind of developed in a way where the tribes were not broken up but were together.
Yeah.
And so the lines of latitude didn't have
No.
the lines of across, what do you call those?
Longitude, I don't know.
Longitude and
longitude.
yeah. Well, the longitude didn't it, but going south wasn't the answer. But then again, the north of Nigeria would have been cut off from any inlet to the sea if they hadn't done it that way.
That's true.
And so if you look at Sudan and those countries across,
yeah.
they all had,
Niger.
yeah, they all had the influence of the Muslim regime,
Yes.
where for the others were smaller tribes and they were either animists or Christians of some kind, because
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the Christians, they came in from the south. And
Yes.
although the first Christian influence in Nigeria came through the desert on the north.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
through 3 Franciscans from Italy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the White Fathers probably came down from the north, the missionaries of Africa.
They probably did, but the first person to really come was a slave from South America, Charles something or other, who came back on the ships and the boats into
Yeah.
Lagos or Calabar or some of these
Yes.
places. That was
Yeah.
the start of it.
You mentioned at one stage about the government taking over the schools.
Yes, when I went out there were just north, south, midwest and west, and then during the Biafran War, they divided into different states, and so we were in Kaduna State, and every state had its own governor, and so it was decided by the Kaduna State government to take all schools in over government schools and take away the leadership of the Catholic schools, the Protestant schools, and make them all government schools. And so that happened in 1972. And so Zonkwa, that was St. Louis Training College Zonkwa, became Teachers College Zonkwa. Now they did leave the staff in it, but if they did, we all had to be interviewed and apply for our jobs again, and whether we were assigned or we weren't. And then, of course, Sister Flannan and myself, and at that time, Sister Mary Clerkin was there. We were interviewed. We had to go to Kaduna and we had to get interviewed and apply for the job. And then gradually, the school became, because there was about 300 students there at that time, but within 5 years of that there was about nearly 2,000 students. And so we had a mixture mightn't be the right way, but we had an intake of Muslims, all kinds of Christians and everything else into the school, which in hindsight was the best thing that ever happened to that area, because everybody integrated with one another. And thanks to Sister Flannan and other leaders, they facilitated the school in such a way that everybody had equal rights in the school. And then when it came to religion, because we had 2 distinct religions, Christian and Muslim. So we didn't have all the different Christian religions, we had one. And we didn't call it Catholic, we called it Christian religion.
Yes.
And they had their input and their instructions and their worship every weekend. And they had, first of all, for their Mass or for their Christian worship, or for their Islam one was always on a Friday. They also had their groups. So you had the YCS, which is the Young Christian Students, which was run by myself for a long time, and then because it was a Christian movement that came from England, and it caught, it really kind of went, I won't say viral, but it was very well accepted. And so, and then you had the young Muslim students, and they had their own. But there was never any animosity. There was a wonderful spirit between them all. And then every year, all the Christian students from all the government schools in the state would gather together for one Sunday and one big day in different colleges at different places, you know. And the whole idea was to help people to get to know and to break down barriers and to break down any kind of animosity that was there and was irrational, but you know yourself, the way people are fed with, as Trump says, fake news. You know, so I would see the takeover of the government schools as being very positive.
Yes.
I really would. And it maybe the standard of education dropped a bit, but it rose again. And it rose with a much more integrated group of people.
I can't remember who it was, but one of the military leaders actually handed the schools back, and that might have been in the 80s, gave the schools back to the religious.
I have a feeling that could have been Cano. I have a feeling it might have been.
Yeah.
I don't know because
even in the West.
Oh, was it in the West?
As well.
Maybe.
No, Cano as well.
Well, you see, I'm not too sure, but there was always a good spirit between St. Louis Secondary School with the government of Cano. But the government, it was only Kaduna State that took over the schools. It wasn't Jos, and it wasn't Cano.
Okay. They were taken over in the West as well. Breda told me that when I was interviewing her.
The only one in the North at that time that was taken over, and I think Minna, you know, down at Niger, where Minna was Niger. But no, the St. Louis and Cano stayed St. Louis and Cano, and St. Louis, they never had government training college or government secondary school. No, it was Kaduna, the governor of Kaduna who did it, you know.
You mentioned Spokane at some stage. You went to Spokane.
I went to Spokane, and I didn't appreciate. Well, I didn't want to go, to be honest with you. I was always happy in Zonkwa, and I grew into it, and you get to know the people, and I was just at home in it, you know. And to go off to America, but anyway, I went, and I did my Master's of Religious Education in Spokane. And then I came back, and it was then when I came back, I went to Cano for a year, and then after that I took the appointment of Inspector of Religious Education.
Oh, it was after that.
In the primary schools, yeah. And like at that time, there were 60 primary schools, and they were all within a radius of about 50 miles, you know, so, because what Zonkwa did, and also there was another training college in Kafanchan, which was 30 miles away. What they did was they prepared, with Zonkwa, it was girls who had completed their primary school. And after that, they had 5 years in the training college, training them to be teachers. And then after 5 years, they got their teaching certificate, and they went back out into their own local areas, and they began the education, primary education in those areas. So the teacher training colleges had a wonderful apostolate.
They certainly have.
Yeah, because it was, and to this day, the headmasters and mistresses of those are the people who have started off with missionary schools. And others as well, but, you know.
The people of Zonkwa, I know.
And one of the Zonkwa girls, Patricia Dodo, who was one of the she was the senior girl that year that the Ebos had to leave, and she was the one who pioneered getting them prepared and getting them out and everything else. She was a northerner, and she later on became Commissioner of Education in Kaduna.
Yes, I think a lot of the past pupils
Yes.
did very
They
well,
did very well,
even to this
and
day.
gave great leadership at
They
the top.
have,
They
have.
did, yeah. Mm.
So when did you come back to Ireland?
Then I came back to Ireland in 1987, and I was appointed to the community school in Ramsgrange as vice principal, and then I became principal.
That must have been quite a change,
That
working in
was
Ireland.
like walking into some place that was so confusing. I knew nothing about Irish education. I was working in a school where there was a mixture of ASTI and TUI, and unions were very strong. There were 2 other St. Louis nuns in the school, and everybody else were people who were local or from around. So it was a very daunting task. And if I knew what it was going to be like, I would not have accepted it. But the blind are foolish in many ways, and I didn't know. But I think I made a good job of it. So I did, and I was there for from 1987 to 1997, and then I spent some years. I became a counsellor. I did a counselling course, and I spent a number of years in the daycare centre helping with that in that area, St. Louis Daycare Centre in Ramsgrange.
You're still going strong here in Rathmines doing the RCIA.
Well, that's what I do now. What I've done up to this year, I got involved in the RCIA, and I also became the leader of the parish council. And I am so enriched because I think I have had adults from every country in the world who, because you know, Rathmines is an area where a lot of people from abroad settle or come to do studies or all the rest of it. And I don't think there's a country that I haven't had somebody for adults who wanted either to finish their religion by getting their confirmation or who wanted to be baptized and didn't get the chance. And that was so enriching. And I still am in contact with people from Slovakia and Italy and South Africa, you know.
Yeah. So the right of
RCIA, which is the right of Christian initiation for adults. Yeah, and it's a wonderful program. And I worked with that in Nigeria, so that's why I felt comfortable taking it over here. So I did, you know. And at this present moment, I have a man. He's in his late 40s, and he's from New Zealand. He works in RTE, and he wants to be. He was brought up in a Catholic family, but received none of the sacraments or any instruction about it. But this is his desire. So hopefully, on Holy Saturday night, he will be received into the church.
That's great work.
Well, I love it. It's not work for me. I love it. You know.
Yeah. What advice would you give to the young African sisters coming along now, starting off in St. Louis?
Well, it would be hard. The African sisters, I so admire them. I really do. And they have so embraced the spirit of St. Louis and the teaching of Abbe Botan. And if that continues to grow in them, they don't need any advice from me. They are so focused on what I would have believed in when I was at school, sharing their gifts with other people.
Thank you very much, Noreen. That was very interesting.